Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. To all my dedicated listeners, we're having another story reduction unit story today. Please grab some snacks, drinks, and sit comfortably because we're getting started. It's going to be some interesting story today. 18 months ago, Cole and Megan's lives were interrupted by a fraction of a second on a Florida highway. There was no dramatic movie explosion, just the terrible sound of metal hitting metal. Megan, a 29-year-old accountant, survived the crash, but her knee was severely shattered. What followed was the quiet, grinding reality that millions of hardworking people face every day. She endured a complex reconstructive surgery, 2 painful months of physical therapy, and 3 separate rounds of expensive MRI scans. Megan was resilient. She pushed through the rehabilitation and was back at her desk working just 4 months later. But while her bones had healed, the financial damage was catastrophic. When the insurance companies finally finished processing the claims and enforcing their deductibles and out-of-network penalties, Cole and Megan were left holding a medical bill for $47,000. Cole, a 31-year-old logistic manager, was used to solving complex problems, coordinating shipping routes, and balancing budgets, but there was no spreadsheet that could fix this. Together, they earned a decent, honest living. They made enough to pay their rent, buy their groceries, and keep their cars running, but they did not make enough to conquer a mountain of debt that grew faster than they could shovel it away. Every single month, they wrote a check for $800 to the medical billing department, and every month, because of the staggering interest rates, that payment seemed to just vanish into thin air, barely making a dent in the principal balance. It was an exhausting cycle. They were working incredibly hard just to stay exactly in the same place. The idea to try something radical didn't come from a place of excitement. It came from a place of a pure exhaustion. Late one evening, Cole was sitting in the living room, scrolling through YouTube on his phone just to keep his mind off the unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. He stumbled onto a video about local storage unit auctions. For an hour, he sat in the complete silence, watching people buy abandoned lockers, hoping to find enough value to turn a profit. He didn't see it as a game or a treasure hunt. With his logistics background, he saw it as an equation of risk versus reward. He walked into the bedroom and gently woke Megan up. He handed her the phone and simply said, "I found something, watch this." Megan sat up and watched the video quietly. As an accountant, she was naturally risk-averse. She didn't gamble, and she certainly didn't throw money at blind guesses. When the video ended, she handed the phone back to her husband. "This is either the smartest thing you've ever come up with," she said flatly, "or it is the absolute dumbest." Cole nodded. "I know, I'm not sure which one it's either." But they didn't just blindly jump in. Over the next week, they treated this idea like a secondary job. Cole focused his research entirely on the local area of Palm Beach, Florida. Palm Beach is a unique market. It is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States, heavily populated by individuals who own second, third, or even fourth homes. Very often, these wealthy residents rent massive, climate-controlled storage units simply because they run out of closet space in their seasonal mansions. And just as often because of sudden relocations, changes in estate management, or simply forgetting, those units are abandoned and go to public auction. While Cole analyzed the locations, Megan did the math. She created a strict risk assessment table. They calculated exactly how much they could afford to lose without missing rent. They pulled every dollar of their savings. And then Cole did something he hated doing. He went to his father and asked for a short-term personal loan to increase their capital. They set a hard, non-negotiable maximum limit. They would bid up to $7,500. If a unit went for a penny more, they would walk away. By Friday evening, Cole was wide awake, staring at the computer screen. The online auction was entirely blind. The unit they had targeted was a massive 10 by 30 foot room. There was no inventory list or no video tour. There was only one single photograph taken from the doorway looking inward. You couldn't see a single specific item. All the photos showed was a dark room filled with the silhouettes of heavy, stacked moving boxes disappearing into the shadows in the back. But Cole had an edge. Using the public lien records required for the auction, he had managed to track down the name of the previous renter. A quick internet search revealed she was a highly prominent retired interior designer. This was a woman whose client list included billionaires, with her architectural work featured in magazines showcasing estates in Palm Beach and the Hamptons. Why her storage unit was being auctioned off was a complete mystery. Maybe she passed away, maybe she moved to Europe, maybe her personal assistant simply forgot to pay the monthly bill. The bidding started slowly, then quickly accelerated as professional buyers jumped in. $3,000, $4,000, $800, $6,200. Cole's hand rested on the computer mouse. Two of the anonymous bidders dropped out, leaving only Cole and one unknown competitor. The price clicked up to $7,100. Cole looked across the kitchen table at Megan. She was pale, the weight of the $7,500 limit pressing down on them. She looked at the screen, then looked at the Cole, and gave one short, firm nod. Cole placed their final bid, $7,500. They sat in the silence as the timer ticked down the final seconds. Their competitor did not counter. The screen flashed and the auction closed. The unit was theirs. Megan slowly closed the laptop, let out a long breath, and quietly said, "Well, now we pray." Saturday morning arrived, bringing the standard heavy Florida humidity. Cole and Megan drove to the storage facility, their phones fully charged and two heavy-duty flashlights in hand. They met the property manager at the front desk, signed the final legal releases, and walked down the long, paved corridor to their unit. The manager produced a pair of heavy bolt cutters, snapped the facility lock, rolled the heavy metal door up, and immediately stepped away. Cole and Megan stood on the threshold and looked inside. The first thing they noticed was the smell. It wasn't the smell of rotting garbage or mildew, it was the dry, distinct scent of old cardboard and completely undisturbed air. As they shined their flashlights into the space, they saw the reality of the photograph. There were dozens and dozens of heavy-duty moving boxes stacked with incredible precision, and written on the side of each box in thick black marker was neat cursive handwriting. The labels read, "Garage purses, grandmother, office, master bedroom, figurines, silver." But the most important detail in the room wasn't the boxes, it was the thick gray layer of ancient spiderwebs blanketing the entire front row. It was undeniable proof that no one had opened this door or touched these items in years. Cole and Megan stood in the doorway for a full minute, absorbing the sheer volume of what they had just bought. Finally, Megan stepped forward, pointed her flashlight toward the closet stack, and said, "Let's start on the left." The very first box they pulled down was the one labeled garage purses. It was surprisingly heavy, far heavier than the standard box of old bags should be. Cole used his pocket knife to carefully slice through the yellowed packing tape. They pulled the flaps back together. Megan reached inside and her hand brushed against a soft, high-quality fabric dust cover. She carefully pulled it out, loosened the drawstrings, and slid the item into the light. It was a flawless Louis Vuitton handbag. The leather was still rich and perfectly maintained. She reached in again. The next item was a heavy, gorgeous leather tote by Marc Jacobs. Below that was a Francesco Biasia bag, proudly stamped made in Italy. Next was a brand new classic Coach purse with the original retail tags from the department store still hanging from the strap. Then came a Michael Kors bag, then an authentic oak leather bag, then a beautifully crafted Helen Welsh designer piece. Megan knelt on the concrete, silently filming each bag with her phone to begin their inventory. She handled each item with extreme care. Cole sat on the overturned crate, frantically typing the brand names and conditions into his phone, checking the current resale markets and auction sites. After pulling the 8th designer bag from the box, Cole slowly put his phone down. He looked at Megan, his voice completely steady, and stated a simple fact. "We just paid for half the unit with one box." But the real shock was waiting at the very bottom. After removing the last bag, Megan noticed a small object tucked beneath the crumpled packing paper at the base of the box. She reached down and pulled it out. It was a tiny, unmistakable robin's egg blue drawstring fabric pouch. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. She tipped the pouch over, and a heavy, intricate silver charm bracelet slid onto her palm. Hanging from the thick silver links was a familiar heart and arrow design. She slowly turned the heart over. Engraved clearly on the back was Tiffany & Co. She looked at the Cole, completely speechless. He nodded slowly. They gently pushed the remaining paper aside. Right next to where the bracelet had been, they found another iconic blue pouch. Inside was a heavy silver Tiffany necklace, still in its original packaging. Tucked tightly into the corner of the box were two small velvet cases. The first held a stunning pair of solid 14-karat gold earrings, verified by a tiny hallmark stamp. The second held a heavy vintage 10-karat gold ring. Cole took a few steps back into the dusty shadows of the storage unit. He sat down hard on the concrete floor, rested his elbows on his knees, and just breathed. For 18 months, they had felt like they were drowning. Now, sitting in a dusty room surrounded by cardboard boxes, Cole realized they might actually survive. And they hadn't even opened the box labeled grandmother yet. The air inside the storage unit was completely still. Cole sat on the concrete floor for just a moment longer, letting the reality of the Tiffany jewelry sink in. Then he took a deep breath, stood up, and looked at Megan. They didn't need to say a word. They turned their attention to the heavy, reinforced wooden crate sitting in the center of the room. Written in thick marker on all four sides was the word fragile, along with the label grandmother. They slid it out into the light with extreme caution. As Cole carefully pried the lid open, they found objects meticulously wrapped in thick layers of yellowed newspaper. They unwrapped the items with the slow, deliberate care of museum curators. The first object was a breathtaking, massive copper elephant, completely handmade with intricate details carved deep into the metal. Next came a matching metal figure of the exact same stunning craftsmanship. Then, Megan unwrapped a large, beautifully glazed decorative plate, turning it to find a renowned artist's signature painted on the back. The fourth item was a heavy bronze statue. Megan gently wiped the dust down the base and read the inscription engraved into the metal. From Egypt, 1977, she looked at Cole, noting quietly that the beautiful piece she was holding was older than both of them. But the fifth item brought their entire operation to a standstill. Tucked securely in the corner of the crate was a small, velvet-lined wooden box. Cole carefully popped the tiny brass latch. Inside, resting on a bed of faded silk, was an intricately enameled jewel-encrusted egg. It was mesmerizing, catching the bright Florida daylight and reflecting deep reds and golds. Megan delicately placed it in the palm of her hand, completely paralyzed. She looked at her husband and whispered the truth they were both thinking. Cole, this is either a $50 department store decoration or it's worth $50,000. Cole simply nodded. They didn't get overly excited. With the utmost respect, they wrapped the egg back into the protective silk exactly the way they found it, placed it in the wooden box, and closed the latch. As the afternoon approached, they reached the third section of their project. Two completely identical, unassuming cardboard boxes tucked away on a middle shelf. When Cole opened the flaps, they realized they had found the designer's personal daily collection. Inside were dozens of small velvet pouches and individual jewelry boxes, many still bearing original retail tags from decades ago. They set up a system like true professionals. Cole opened each small container, reading the faded price tags aloud into the quiet room, while Megan stood with her ledger, writing down every detail. $285, $320, $150, $200. He pulled out a heavy silver chain, reading the $9.25 sterling silver stamp on the clasp. Next was a massive silver pendant holding a brilliant green stone. Then a beautiful Brighton watch, still in its original box with the factory tags, followed by two pairs of authentic Tiffany & Company sunglasses, proudly stamped Made in Italy. By mid-afternoon, Megan had filled 3 entire pages of her notebook with high-value inventory. They were reaching the very bottom of the second box, sifting through a layer of crumpled paperbacks when Cole's fingers brushed against something completely different. It wasn't a soft velvet pouch, it was a hard, flat cardboard presentation box. He slowly pulled it out and wiped away a thin layer of dust. They both instantly recognized the iconic, elegant gold crow logo printed on the lid. Time seemed to completely stop. They stood in the middle of the dusty unit staring at the green box, neither of them daring to breathe. 5 full seconds passed before Cole finally lifted the lid. Inside was the official, heavy wooden inner box, complete with the original folded certificate of authenticity. Resting on a soft pillow was a breathtaking, authentic latest Rolex Datejust watch. The stainless steel and gold band was in pristine condition, and the elegant face of the watch was set with brilliant, sparkling diamonds. Megan covered her mouth with her hand, tears finally welling up in her eyes. The math was undeniable now. They hadn't just survived, they had won. Because Cole and Megan were mature, grounded adults, they did not lose their heads. They did not take these incredible treasures to a local pawn shop, and they certainly did not meet strangers in parking lots for quick cash. They operated with total integrity and patience. The entire liquidation process took 2 months of careful, diligent work. They photographed every item and reached out to certified professionals. The Rolex watch and the enameled egg were sent to highly certified, prestigious auctions house down in the Miami. The expert appraisers determined that the egg was not an original Fabergé, but rather an exceptionally high-quality late 19th century antique replica. It was still a deeply historical item that brought in a wonderful price an antique collector. From an antique collector. The Rolex, however, was verified as a completely authentic, a flawless 1987 masterpiece in excellent working condition. The grandmother's bronze statues and copper figures were meticulously evaluated and purchased by an independent antique dealer. The massive collection of silver and gold jewelry was verified and bought by a licensed jeweler who paid securely by check, and beautiful designer handbags went directly through an authorized high-end resale boutique in Palm Beach. When the long, careful process was finally over and all the auction fees, commissions, and taxes were properly paid, their final total sat in their bank account $94,000. Cole didn't even hesitate. The very first thing he did was pick up his phone and dial the number that had haunted his dreams for a year and a half. He called the hospital's medical billing department. When the representative answered, Cole gave his account number and calmly stated he would like to pay the balance in full. $47,000, one single transaction. The manager on the other end on the line actually paused and asked if the amount was correct. Cole smiled, looked at Megan standing right beside him, and said yes. Megan gripped his hand so tightly her knuckles turned white, holding on until the transaction was complete. The very next day, they drove to Cole's father's house. They returned the money he had so graciously loaned them, adding a generous amount of interest to thank him for believing in them. When his father tried to refuse the extra money, Cole simply left the cash on the kitchen table and drove away before he could argue. That night, the heavy, suffocating cloud that had hovered over their small apartment was entirely gone. For the first time in 18 months, a hard-working young couple lay down in their bed and went to sleep without a single thought about medical bills. If you ask Megan today about the incredible journey, she will tell you a surprising truth. The best feeling she experienced wasn't holding a diamond-encrusted Rolex, and it wasn't pulling a pristine Louis Vuitton bag out of a dusty box. The greatest, most profound feeling of her entire life was walking out of that medical billing office a few days later, holding a printed paper receipt that simply said balance zero. It was the feeling of a dark chapter being closed forever. Cole still likes to sit on the couch and quietly scroll through the local storage auction websites, and these days Megan doesn't try to stop him. This is the story. That's the end. Please leave me comments, drop some sentences. How do you feel about the story? Do you have your own to share? I would love to hear your own experience if you have such. And if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and see you in the next video. Bye.